Welcome to today's video about performance anxiety, identifying and channeling your performance nerves. Now, today I will essentially be summarizing two articles from the blog, The Bulletproof Musician. This blog was created by Dr. Noah Kageyama, who was a famous violinist kind of from an early age and eventually went to Juilliard for his graduate degree. And up until that point, he was really struggling with frustrating performance anxiety. And during his time at Juilliard, he ended up working with a sports psychologist and became fascinated by the way that he was playing with these sports psychology tactics. So he left performance and the violin and became a psychologist, and today specializes in performance anxiety for musicians. What he has actually done is created the Bulletproof Musician, which is a fabulous resource for any musician, not just a violinist, to better understand how to achieve peak performance despite anxiety. I would really encourage you to explore this site. It's fabulous. We will be discussing two of his articles. The first one is, what is performance anxiety really? So it's going to help us to be able to define what performance anxiety is. And to do that, we have to understand the three components to anxiety. So the first component is somatic. This is your physical response to anxiety. Then we have the cognitive or mental response to anxiety and affective response to anxiety. That's your emotional response. So a physical response to anxiety would be like a tightening in the chest, racing heart, difficulty breathing, clammy hands. A cognitive response to anxiety would be an increase in self-doubt or worrying, or thoughts and images of failure. And an affective response to anxiety would be an increase in fear, panic, or general apprehension. So knowing the three components of anxiety will actually help you better combat your performance anxiety, because you kind of know which ones you're actually experiencing in the moment. So for somatic anxiety, you can essentially learn to relax under pressure. You can learn how to play under adverse conditions. You can maybe choose music based on what you know about how your body responds to nerves. Mental anxiety, you can learn to improve your ability to focus on demand, learn to quiet your mind, or visualize perfect performances. If you particularly struggle with emotional anxiety, it may be helpful to learn to embrace adrenaline and fear and to choose to move forward with your performance despite that. So those are some helpful tools, and we'll talk about how to do those more specifically in a minute. So those are the three components of anxiety, but there are also two types of anxiety. So we have state anxiety and trait anxiety. State anxiety is when you're just nervous about an upcoming event that frightens you. So this would be like you're a relatively calm person, but you have your driving exam that you know you need to complete, and that is making you anxious. Or you're waiting for a diagnosis from a doctor, and that's making you anxious. Trait anxiety is much more is a type of person who just tends to be anxious more in general. So going to the grocery store and talking to the butcher makes you anxious. That's probably trait anxiety. Or going to a class is making you anxious. That's an example of trait anxiety. So it's helpful to know which type of anxiety you're experiencing. And if you tend to be somebody who has a lot of trait anxiety, it may be helpful to address that in non-musical settings. So this is what Dr. Kageyama says. Frequently, I find that a musician's tentativeness or self-doubt on stage is reflected in some degree of tentativeness and self-doubt off stage. Such musicians tend to doubt themselves and lack confidence, focus a great deal on how others perceive them, and have a difficult time believing in themselves. So if that sounds like you, it may be helpful to build in opportunities to practice courage. So he suggests trying to become more adventurous, trying foods that you don't like, or hanging out with people that you're not used to hanging out with, anything that sort of gets you out of your comfort zone. Doing those things in your non-musical life may actually help you play with more courage and bravery on stage as well. So what is his solution to, after we've kind of defined what anxiety it is that you're experiencing, how do we then go about becoming better at performing under anxious circumstances? And he says, practice performing your pieces in situations that will aggravate somatic, cognitive, and affective anxiety. So essentially, create controlled settings where you're going to practice performing when things are not ideal. And he actually gives you some suggestions. So I'll read straight from the article. He suggests go for a quick run around the block. With your heart pumping and slightly out of breath, can you still nail the opening? Turn the TV or radio on in the background. Can you still focus on your piece? Get dressed up and turn on a video recorder so you can post your performance on YouTube. Allowing yourself only one shot at this, can you play everything perfectly the first time? Which muscles get tight under pressure? What happens to your pitch or intonation? Do you tend to go sharp or flat? What happens to your sense of timing? Do you rush or drag? Where do you tend to have memory slips? Know thy enemy. Good advice, no? So creating situations where you're going to aggravate your somatic, cognitive, or affective anxiety, and then purposefully performing in those situations will help your performance anxiety improve. The next article I wanted to summarize and convey for you is how to make performance anxiety an asset instead of a liability. So rather than trying to eliminate performance anxiety altogether, this article teaches us how to channel that performance anxiety to actually make us better performers. So he kind of gives a brief introduction on left brain and right brain thinking. And this is really important for understanding performance anxiety. So the left brain, and this is pretty general, but the left brain is usually in charge of words, numbers, logic, analysis, criticism, details, and judgment. The left brain is great for your practice time. It's going to help you pay attention to detail, really focus on fixing that one issue, really nailing that Italian. Not great for performance, right? Whereas the right brain is typically in charge of sounds, images, patterns, kinesthetic sensations, emotions, the big picture, or creativity. And this is great for performing. So this is what we kind of want, this part of our brain is what we want to use when we're actually stepping on stage. Dr. Kageyama says that essentially we flip these. So we tend to practice with our right brain, sort of lackadaisical, not really focusing on detail, not being very mindful. And then when it's time to step on stage, we revert to left brain, judging, criticizing, overanalyzing. And so we have to kind of learn how to quiet the left brain when we step out on stage so that the right brain can kind of take over. So how do we do this? So he offers us a sports psychology concept called centering. And centering is just a pre-performance routine. And what it does is it channels your nerves and it directs focus even in extreme situations. So centering is a pre-performance routine that's going to help channel your nerves and direct your focus. A word of warning: centering is a discipline or practice that takes time to master. It's going to be maybe slow going at start, maybe a little awkward at the start, but if you know that you struggle with performance anxiety, I would suggest building this routine that we're going to go over into your daily practice time. And what's going to happen is that over time, with consistency and persistence, you'll be able to center yourself and quiet your left brain much more quickly. And this will better equip you to do that on stage as well. So he lists all of these steps for your centering pre-performance routine. Step 1, pick your focal point. This should be slightly below eye level, and all this does is minimize distractions and avoids left brain interference. So pick your focal point. Then form your clear intention. Give your brain a specific goal statement using assertive declarative language. He says, make sure that you don't say the word don't, as in don't crack on the high note. Instead, what he says is use statements like that tell you what you want, not what you don't want. For example, instead of don't crack on the high note, give yourself the goal, nail the high note. So step 2, form your clear intention. Step 3, breathe mindfully with the diaphragm. So breathe diaphragmatically, and he says that this is the antidote for the fight or flight state. Step 4 is scan and release excess tension. So pay attention to your body, breathing mindfully. Go through each of your muscle groups, and on the inhale, notice the level of tension, and on the exhale, release the excess tension. And this is huge. This is huge for all singing and all mental health in general. I love that scanning. So step 4, scan and release excess tension. Step 5, you want to find your center. Find your center of gravity. And Dr. Kageyama says that just the act of searching for your center will quiet your left brain activity. Step 6, repeat your process cue. So give yourself a reminder of what sounds, feels, or looks you'd like to produce. He says you can do this 2 ways. You can give yourself a word like powerful or calm or easy, or you can forget words altogether and just feel, hear, or see yourself performing exactly as you wish. So repeat your process cue. Give yourself the sound, feel, or look of what you want to do on stage. And you can either do that by a word or merely feeling, hearing, or seeing what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Step 7, direct your energy. This is the most woo-woo of all the steps, but he says do an internal search to find the energy that you feel in your body and gather it in the center. Then direct that energy upward through the torso, the neck, into your head, and blast it out through your eyes or forehead like a laser beam at the focal point that you picked in step 1. Think of this beam as a conduit for your music and the energy that will convey your clear intention to the audience. So that's your step. Again, it's a practice. It takes time, and you'll notice that I essentially read quotes from his website. So I'll link these 2 articles on this page, and I encourage you to go through and read them yourself and print them out. So I've printed them out so I can look over these and practice these in my practice time. Here are the references, and I'll also include these in the description on YouTube. I hope this was helpful, and happy singing.